14th, 2020 CPC meeting. Welcome everybody. Hope everybody's doing well.
Oh, here she is. Okay,
great.
Cool.
So we've called the meeting to order. Agenda item number 1 is review of minutes from previous meetings. I think we're 2 meetings worth of minutes that we haven't had a chance to review yet. So, I mean, I would make a motion to table that for our next meeting. Have a second?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Izzy, that's distracting for me, a little baby. Welcome, little baby. Let's jump to agenda item number 2, which is the small grant application. I think there's a couple things there to talk about. So I think we want to finalize the application, maybe get an update on Mike Sullivan. I don't know if you've had a chance to run by the full city council, our request for them to set aside $18,000 for this program. Any update there, Mike?
No update. I'm going to be entering orders tomorrow. I wanted to wait till after this meeting.
Okay.
For the meeting coming up this coming Tuesday.
Okay, great. The other I think question that has come to my attention about the grant application is the parameters for the program. I know that we had a motion and a vote to ask Mike to go to the city council with a program that would be in total of $18,000 and with applications of less than up to $3,000 total. It wasn't clear to me whether we had agreed on what maximum for the total project of any project that would qualify for the small grant application. I know we have had some discussions, and I think Meg, in your draft, it was $6,000. But again, I wasn't certain that we had, as a committee, had agreed that that was going to be the maximum amount of any project that would qualify. I think there's some merit to considering projects that have, larger than $6,000 in total, but that's just, my opinion. And again, I didn't think that I don't recall that we actually voted on what that maximum amount would be. So, I would suggest that we consider $10,000, but that's just picking a number. I think the idea being that, if it's a $10,000 project and where CPA is coming up with $3,000, then that $3,000 is getting leveraged up to 10, or 3 times a leverage versus a $6,000 maximum for a project would be, a leveraging 1-to-1 on the CPA award under that small grant program. So I don't know what other people, I'm going to open up the floor to discussion about what other people's opinions might be about a maximum, and hopefully we can take a quick vote and finalize that aspect of it. So anybody have any opinions about the maximum amount? Meg, what do you think? Or Mike, I'm sorry, you had your hand up. What do you say, Mike?
Meg can go first.
So I initially picked 6,000 because it was similar to Northampton's process, and they're the only one very locally to us that has a small grants process. There are some other small grants processes that are being run by other towns, but most of them are much further east where, to be honest, the average cost of things may be higher, right? So I wanted to kind of look at the Northampton case as one that just locally seemed applicable. And I think the goal is just that the projects are simple enough to be able to go underneath a streamlined project. So whatever that right number is, the goal is just to make sure that these are really straight shot projects that are like one and done in a single cycle, done quickly, not a lot of contingent factors that would hold things up. Or, I mean, the goal is not that it's like this multi-layered project that has a lot of different moving parts that then we really have to oversee, that has lots of complication.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mike and Mike.
Oh, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah. So if I understand this correctly, Kip, the $3,000 is the max anybody can get, regardless of the size of the project.
Correct.
Okay. My thinking is to make that number 12,000, and the reason being that'd be as far as matching the group is, we'd be giving them anywhere from 25%, 50% of their project. If it's a $12,000 project, they'd be getting 25% of what their project is. If it's a $6,000 project, they'd be getting half.
Mike, did you freeze up or are you finished?
No, I'm finished.
Well, both, I think. Frozen and gone.
Sorry, yeah. Nothing surprises me anymore. So, Mike Falsetti, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mike, I couldn't quite get what you said. Would you mind repeating what you said? I just got blurps of it.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
No.
Now?
You know what? I could repeat it or put it in the chat. Basically, what Mike was saying is he was suggesting the total amount should be 12,000 as the funding, the total amount that a small project would be funding, in which case 3,000 would count as 25%. And if it was the $6,000 project, it would count as 50%. So he's just saying maybe make the total funding amount up to 12,000. Is that right, Mike?
Correct. Yep.
Oh.
And certainly it makes sense to me just to broaden the number of projects that can apply. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to approve any more, but it does mean that a $12,000 project can come through the small grant process if it isn't terribly complicated, as opposed to having to go through the full review. And, I think Megan's point is well taken. We just don't have a whole lot of guidance about how this works. And Northampton is a good model, but depending on people's needs, I think to a certain extent, we're just in the dark here. We do it for a year and we see what comes in.
I very much agree with that. I think that especially because we're doing this for the first time, we don't really know what's going to happen. And also we might not know after a year. We might need to have it be 2 years until we really know, because the first year is often a learning process for the community where they're learning what this program is and how it can be used. So we'll have to just see how it goes and then tweak it as necessary. I think one of the pieces I talked about initially is creating a report for the city council at the end of the cycle around how it went. So how was this money spent? How did the process go? I think it will also be really important to check in with Amy and ask her, like, how did the process feel for you as the staffer running it? Did it feel onerous? Did it feel right to have it be kind of this open process where folks can rolling admission come in anytime? So I think we'll have to kind of check in certainly at the end of the process and debrief it.
Anybody else have anything they want to add to this?
I see Mike Falsetti's hand up.
All right, so where are we landing on this thing? Anybody want to make a motion?
Mike has his hand up.
I think Mike Falsetti's trying to.
Oh, sorry,
attention.
Mike, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, for the sake of ease, I would like to see it capped per application at $6,000. We can always expand it next year. But for the sake of ease of our citizens that may have small projects, I think, as we all know, the more you're involved, the more involved it gets. We can always change it next year. As Megan pointed out, I would be more comfortable. I mean, it's up to all you, but I would be more comfortable at a $6,000 limit than the 12. That's just me.
Marco, you have your hand up.
I do, because $3,000, just by the nature of how much it is means that it's going to be like the electrical component of a very small project, or like some minor contribution towards something else. So I like $6,000 practically doubles the amount of, or the type of project. So then maybe it becomes a little more substantial, but you're going to use that up right away. That's like signage maybe for a small project, or 2 light fixtures. It's really a small amount. So you're narrowing what we're getting. And maybe that's the point of it. Maybe the point is to keep it small and simple. But 6 starts to become more the range of, you could do tiling in a kitchen, like a commercial kitchen, or
I think the goal is not to expand the amount that the CPC would give, but that folks are debating if the overall budget total should be larger. But I think
Mike said 6, that meant excuse me, I didn't mean to talk over you.
that's okay.
I was saying that the $3,000 puts you in a certain category, and what Mike Sullivan was saying makes sense if it's 25% or 50%. I'm okay with raising either limit, knowing that perhaps we can come back and adjust based on what kind of projects we get. With the small amount, we might find ourselves with like really small projects. That's all. And maybe that's the point of it. So that's good.
Or none,
I'll
or
stop
none,
now.
you
Thank
know,
you.
I mean, I think that's the, we made,
We don't know.
I think, you know, we at our last meeting, passed a vote that said that the maximum award to any applicant would be $3,000.
Yes.
And that came in that Mike Sullivan was going to go to the city council and ask the city council, which we also voted on, for a total dollar amount in a small grant fund of $18,000. So $18,000 total of money to spend in a small grant as set aside by the city council, meaning we don't have to go back to them for approval. And they may not agree to that. Doesn't mean the small grant program goes away, but $18,000 set aside for grants of $3,000 or less. What I don't think we addressed at the last meeting was, you know, what the total project budget could be to qualify for the small grant. Is it 6,000? Is it 10,000? Is it 12,000? So I think we want to stay focused on that upper limit for the total budget for a project. And if
So
they're
can I just
out,
give
if
an
it's a
example
$10,000 project, then they still can only get $3,000. So
the examples that I put in the application are for open space and recreation projects: signs or plaques, interpretive or educational installations, trail maintenance or creation, invasive grading, soil treatment, vegetation, wildlife or protected species enhancement, park benches, bleachers, playground equipment, or other capital improvement fixed to the property. And then for examples of historic preservation projects, things such as archiving historic records, the digitization of records. But yeah, the goal would be that these are small pieces. Now, what that means, and I think Amy added language in the, as she was tweaking the application, is that you, in at least Northampton, has seen the same applicants come back and sort of seen it as like a multi-stage process where every year they come back. Or in Northampton, I think they're allowed to come back every cycle, and they do a number of cycles a year. And so, for example, there was a retirement community that had a knotweed invasive species issue. And so they came in 3 stages in a row asking for $3,000 out of 6. and every time would do yet another section of trying to, fight against this invasive species. So we might see similar things to that as well, where maybe there's a digitization project, but maybe a piece of it is done kind of one stage at a time.
Okay, so where are we on answering the question of what's the total amount that a project budget can be to qualify for a small grant award? I've heard 3, 10, 12. Anybody got another number we want to throw in there?
I think we're just hopelessly in a range where it's our first year, it's a strange year, and to some extent we're going to have to speculate.
Right.
And the other, I think, goal of this process, which we haven't touched on yet, but which I think is important, is that this gives us $18,000 that will not be presumably sucked up by some giant project. It allows us to consider small things of interest to the community and not have the funding exhausted before we even get to them. So I think it's important for us to do it. I just don't have a good feel for whether that means $6,000 projects or $12,000 projects. I think we do want to put a limit somewhere, but
yeah, I agree.
I just don't have a strong opinion about where to draw the line. I don't know enough.
Anybody have a strong opinion about where they want to draw the line?
12,000.
12,000. You want to make a motion? Want to make a motion, Mike?
I mean, I presented 6,000, but similar to Mimi, if others have really strong opinions, it doesn't matter to me.
Mike,
if I was going to pick, it would be 6. That's what I initially presented.
Mike, do you want to make a motion on your number?
Yeah, sure. I'll make a motion that we amend the total budget of the project to $12,000.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for $12,000. Any open to discussion? Anybody want to add anything at this point? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Can you keep your hands up, folks?
Oh, sorry.
Or you can use the button too on your Zoom account.
It's unanimous.
Except Meg has, I don't know what
Oh,
Meg's.
Meg, well, other than you, Meg, you count your own.
Thank you.
So what was the total of the vote?
12.
12.
Okay.
And,
All right.
again, it's only for a year. We'll
No,
see
I
how it
meant-
goes.
Right.
That's the total funding. Okay.
So,
It wasn't 12.
so is there, I don't, we have the draft application. I don't, it looked good to me. I don't know that we need to discuss it or whether it's just good to go. I guess I'll give everybody an opportunity to, if they want, we can raise that as a point of discussion. Otherwise, I think we just, make that one change to it. Amy, finalize the application and let's get it out the door. Amy, you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention when I did this draft, I got some feedback from the CPA in Medford and, talking to also Ben Murphy. And so one thing that's on here is that I put each applicant may submit one application per year. And that's because some other CPA communities have had one person applying over and over again. And so that way it sort of frees it up for other people. So that's one thing I've added here. The other thing is that that Ben Murphy made the suggestion, first of all, the way that Meg drafted this, it sort of discourages homeowners from applying. And Ben Murphy was saying that one way to handle that would be to say that, people have to be located, they have to be homeowners in the local historic district to be considered. So as you can see, I put in parentheses the second paragraph under the examples. It says buildings located in the Fairfield, after it says that privately owned historic buildings, wait, sorry, I gotta look at this, or privately owned historic ones. Okay, so it gives a list of things that are not encouraged, and one of them is privately owned historic buildings that provide no public access, and then or use, and then I put buildings located in the Fairfield Local Historic District may be considered. I could take that out, but you know, it seems like that would make sense. And then I also spoke with Ben about I'm seeing something on the screen that Meg put up. I'm not sure what this is. I'm sort of like, okay. About Meg wanted it to be so that, you know, Ben could present for the applicant, so that you know, reduce the hurdles for an applicant who might be intimidated by coming before the Holyoke Historic Commission. And he said basically, if it's on the state register, then yes, he would do that. He could just issue a letter on his own authority, but he's not comfortable with representing the applicant. So, but I don't know if we'll have many historic applicants anyway, but, you know, that person would still, and I can try to help and coach that person or whatever, but they still, I mean, I think if they had a conversation with Ben, you know, and they understand what exactly it's going to be, it shouldn't be too hard for them, but they still would have to answer questions of the Historic Commission.
Okay, great. Anybody else have any other comments on the application, or do we want to just approve and finalize that application to be?
I just wanted to state that one of the main ways we're streamlining it is that there is not a separate eligibility application from the full application. And that means that there's more legwork for Amy in this process. So we're streamlining it for the person that's applying. That doesn't mean that it's less work. It just means the burden is being shifted a little bit from the applicant to Amy. So I just wanted to highlight her work in that. Because that means that she's going to be effectively having a phone conversation with them and filling out the eligibility application form for them. So they don't have to do that on their own, and like guiding them more and hand holding them through that process for folks who really do need it or want it.
And
Well said.
we are grateful to have somebody who can do that.
Amen.
It'll also be very interesting, I think, going forward to see whether that actually is easier than going back and forth about eligibility determinations through our former process with, you know, big applicants who still don't quite understand what we're asking them for. But a philosophical question to be answered over the coming year.
Okay, so we're good with releasing the application as is, getting it out there.
Councilor Sullivan would like to speak.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and maybe Amy can help with this. Can everybody hear me, or is it just
Yeah.
Mike that can't hear me?
Sometimes your sound freezes up, but we're hearing you right. At least I'm hearing you right now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I've got a little bit of a problem with that sentence. Fairfield Local Historic District may be considered. Now, I'm doing this from memory, but I believe that when you're dealing with private historical properties, that access to the public is key. All right, so you can use the funds for these kind of projects, but it has to be on the exterior or where it can be viewed by the public. But if it's an interior project on the building, that's a no-no, because the public can't get access to it. So
Must be also accessible.
For example, if there were
the back of your house, for example.
or the back of your house, yeah, it has to be visible to the public.
Visible, that's
Any
right.
project. So to make a blanket statement that buildings located in the Fairfield Historic District may be considered, I don't know if that's problematic or not.
That's why I put the word may, but I could add the word visible, buildings with visible changes if we want to get that specific.
Or appropriate projects in the Fairfield Avenue Historic District. So just
Qualify.
anything that suggests that they aren't automatically
And
eligible.
I'll defer to Marco after I'm done.
Yeah.
But the whole concept that someone else may have a property that isn't in the historic district that's a historic building. An example I saw somewhere on Facebook recently is what happened with the old firehouse down on Lyman and Canal Street.
Yeah.
You know, where something like that might want to be considered. Other residents in Holyoke, we have out in Rock Valley some farmhouses that I think
And
even
barns.
back to the late 1700s or early 1800s. So
Really interesting. I initially very much felt like we would not want to tackle it at all, right? That we would just want to say no privately owned residences. Because we could see a flood and then we would have to have really clear criteria around which we would say yes or no. And I at least wasn't in a place to feel like I had that clear sense of what that criteria list would be that I could bring to you. So in starting the small grants process, my goal was to keep us out of that morass. So initially, I even had just had language that said private, properties are not encouraged to apply, right? If you're a privately owned residence. And then we added the language based on what Ben Murphy said, saying that residents from Fairfield Ave may be considered. But that to me is a wider question for this group to have around if we want to consider those properties as part of small grants this cycle or not. And we should develop a policy and a criteria list at some point concerning it.
Well, is this a case where, particularly since this is going to be our first experience with it, we want to just take those or that set of potential applicants out of the category of eligibility altogether for this year and see how it goes and work on a policy to address it for the next cycle?
I'd love to hear what Marco has to say.
yeah.
Well, when the conversation was centered around the Fairfield Avenue Local Historic District, I'm chair of that commission. And so when people were saying about not being able to do work indoors or in the back, the only thing so if somebody were to receive a grant, they would have to make an application, a COA, to the commission to see if they can do the work. The work is regulated by the commission only with regard to what's visible from a public way. So usually that's Fairfield Avenue, but at cross streets, it's also from the cross streets. So there are layers of this. So if an application was for the interior work, they wouldn't have to go through the commission. And then it's just like any other public residence, like heck, I'd like to maybe, get a couple $1,000s and repoint my brickwork, or, so if it's facing the street, that's great, because that is improving a local historic district, even though some private citizen is benefiting from that money. It would have, so I'm just trying to distinguish between what the commission and the district has to do that's different from what any other residents would want to do, because there are historic buildings, there's one historic district, and then there's, like just private citizens who want to do small projects. You'll get inundated, right? Wouldn't we? With who wouldn't want $2,000 or $3,000 to do that kind of work? I'll cede my talk, but it only to say that if it goes through the Historic District Commission, that's just a little bit different. We only regulate things that are visible from a public way. Thanks.
Mike Falsetti.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with Megan. At this point in the ballgame, I would avoid this topic altogether. I think just for the few minutes or the minutes we've discussed all the various layers and the exceptions and the eligibilities and the requirements. That's just us this evening. There'll be more to this than meets the eye. For our inaugural voyage, I would just leave it out. We can add it, but at this point, I would leave it out. I think we're opening up a can of worms that, Amy will be there all day just trying to get back to every individual homeowner that complains. If he doesn't get it, why did my neighbor get it? And so on and so forth. I would just
Keep in mind, it is
stay
first
away
come,
from it.
first serve. So there's only 18,000. So that's the other piece too to consider, is it's not like a full floodgate, right? No matter what we agree, we will only be able to give up to $18,000 to the small grants proposals unless we somehow have a conversation and vote to add to that total.
No, Amy, and Meg, I agree, but you can't make everybody happy. This is the kind of thing that, well, why did my neighbor get it and why didn't I get it? I just feel at this point, I'd rather hold off till next year to see how things develop.
So let me, I'm trying to look at the application and Zoom at the same time, which is multitasking beyond my capacity at times. But the application, there is that paragraph, I guess it would be 3. Some projects are generally not appropriate for small grant applications. What if we just delete that whole paragraph and just let it ride and see what happens? You know, if we get an application, we'll decide whether we want to fund, you know, a historic privately owned building or not. It'll be competing with others. I don't, you know, located, you know, it's like an exemption for the Fairfield Local Historic District may be considered, but other ones aren't. And why are we narrowing it at?
Can I just clarify something that Ben Murphy, when I talked to him about this, he was concerned that we would get a flood of homeowners, and his suggestion was that to say only homeowners from the Fairfield Local Historic District may be considered, so that it would limit it. But you can further limit it by saying no homeowners. I just, you know, the only thing, you know, with that, of course, is, you know, with anyone in the Fairfield Local Historic District, you know, right, as if Marco can correct me if I'm wrong, they own a historically significant property, I would think.
That's right. All the structures on the street have to go through this process if they want to do any changes that affect the architectural character of the building. So if you can't change windows, you can paint. There's certain things that are permitted and other things that are not. They're not permitted, but that require an application. Look, I'd be lying if I wouldn't be happy to see this, because there are lots of really nice buildings on the street, nice residents, and you know, people don't have the means to fix them up. So there's one beautiful white house that's just falling apart because it's rotting away. There are a couple of porches that, you know, $3,000 would go a long ways to, you know, making it structurally sound. So I think I have no fewer than 4 porches that are being supported by exterior framing, you know, like pressure treated framing at an angle. Like, I'd love to see it, you know, see the street, the historic buildings on the street get repaired. But I don't know if that's in the best interest of, it isn't of the city, in the sense that a local historic district is being improved. But it's not if I'm, you know, Joe Citizen going, how come those guys are special? What about me? Right?
I would be happy to see that line taken out, because that was not my original intention, right? But I also am not disinterested in that conversation. And I would like to talk with Marco more about creating a parallel process and bringing it to the CPC that's specific to Fairfield Ave, and having that conversation with the CPC around, if it's deemed a historic district, do we see value in investing in it in a certain way over a certain number of years? And having that conversation as a group. And we can agree or not agree, but I do think we should have that conversation.
So that goes beyond, excuse me.
Bravo.
Rose.
Yes, I was going to like say in support of that, yes. And the city should have more than just one local historic district. It should have multiple historic districts, because it has lots of areas that can be collected and displayed as, you know, as a destination to go see, as an attraction to buy homes, as all that.
Yeah, and this may be a relatively low expense thing that returns way more value to the city than we put into it.
Amen.
Rose, what do you have to say?
So I'm just going to join in, because I think the Fairfield Historic District is wonderful. I do know that when I first chaired the CPA committee, one of the conversations that we had was, my conversation was, how does Rock Valley shore up its beautiful historic barns? And how does the Fairfield Avenue and the whole Highlands, with their small barns in the backyards that had such historic presence in earlier years, how do they join forces? And so this is a great project for this kind of work, where we can get a roof for, you know, we can get money towards putting a roof on barns or small historic venues in the backyards that at one time had the whole presence of being a part of their backyard venue when the roads came through those avenues. So I think that the Fairfield project is a great project for us to look forward to, but then there are other projects around the whole city that could use just a little bit of money here and there to make a difference.
So I'm going to circle back on that, on my suggestion, which was, you know, let's leave it open to people making applications on Fairfield Ave and others. And if we get inundated with them, you know,
First come, first serve.
I'm sorry.
The first in are the ones who get the money as we
yeah, right. Maybe, but you know, if we get a bunch of them, we'll have a problem. But we may not get a bunch of them. We
can only hope.
Some good ones. So, you know, that again, I'm going to come back to, you know, we have this sentence: some projects are generally not appropriate for small grant application process, because not only just because of their complexity or nature, but also budgets and things like that. What if we just take that whole paragraph out and let's see what we get for applications under the small grant? All you can get is $3,000 on a project. What did we say? 12,000 total. So
I don't want to be haphazard though, like, because what that creates is like this one Fairfield house gets it, this other thing gets it, and then like no one even knows really what small grant stands for. So I'm just thinking we're shepherding this new thing into being. I want to make sure that we don't like kill it on arrival, right? Through that one project that gets highlighted as like, oh, look at this one thing that was terrible, and then small grants is dead, right? So I would much rather have a really thoughtful conversation around, do we want to support Fairfield Ave? And then we come up with a plan and a process around that level of support, versus like that one lucky SOB who found out about it in time, gets his application in.
Well,
I don't know. That to me seems haphazard.
Yeah. The other thing about this is, you know, we can proceed as we have this with the caveats. All we're talking about is a specific sub-process. You know, if you see that your neighbor has gotten funded from the CPA and you would also like $3,000 and you have a small project, nothing prevents you from applying under the normal process.
Mm-hmm.
And if we still have $3,000, we might give it to you.
Good point.
You know, this is a specific dedicated fund that can't otherwise be touched, and it's valuable for that. But I don't think we're actually foreclosing anybody.
Good point. And the same thing is true of all of the applicants, right? I mean, Steve Huntley got some funding and Michael Moriarty didn't, you know? I mean, that's the way grant applications work. You know, just because one gets one and the other didn't, you know? I think that, you know, I honestly, you know, I live around the corner from Fairfield Street. You know, it's a beautiful street.
Yes.
So, you know, I would like to see as many of those houses on that street get, you know, fixed up. However, same thing on Pleasant Street. There's some houses here I'd like to see.
But that's where
too.
I think
Right.
Meg's suggestion that what we need is a really thoughtful process and conversation comes into play. Because yes, I think the consensus here is we are very much in favor of supporting the Fairfield Avenue district. We're also in favor of supporting similar districts that have not been designated as such. And, you know, this almost sounds to me as though we're going in the direction of, if this pilot project, as it were, works out, maybe we want a small historic privately owned process so that we can support this kind of thing all over the city where it's appropriate and where we've worked out our criteria and we know what we want to do.
Yeah, I like that plan.
Yeah, I would agree.
So look, let's
That's
try to finalize this discussion. Okay. So what we're trying to do is approve the application so we can get it out on the street and have people start applying under the small grant application. Open cycle, no more than $3,000, no more than $12,000 total budget. May or may not need to go to the city council for approval of each individual one. Right now, in my mind, the holdup is approving the application. So, what do we want to do about the application? We leave it exactly the way it is. We can delete that paragraph. We can change something. Let's get this off the dime and move on to other. We got poor Steve Huntley sitting here, and
yeah.
If
I can just cycle back
till midnight.
to Councillor Sullivan's original comment, which launched this whole discussion. I think that we can address his point simply by making it clear that things that are not visible from the street, even in the, whether you're in the historic district or not, are not suitable for this funding. Did I understand that correctly?
I hate to, could you say that again, Mimi?
I'm sorry, I'm making this more tangled than I should be, but I think that your original point about this language was that we don't want to encourage people to apply for funding for interiors and stuff not visible from the street in the Fairfield Avenue Historic District.
That was one point. The other point is, I don't think it's fair at all. There's historic and beautiful houses in every ward in the city. And to say because you have a house in Elmwood or Rock Valley or the Flats or wherever that you don't qualify because you're not on Fairfield Ave, I don't think that's fair at all.
Okay, and we all are on board with we want to be able to consider projects elsewhere. So do we take care of all of the objections if we just strike the reference to the Fairfield Avenue Historic District?
I think so.
Yeah, can I just make a suggestion? I've been raising my hand for a while. I just wanted to say that I think that maybe just removing the whole mention of Fairfield Historic District, because the way that Megan had this, it did say, under projects not appropriate, generally not appropriate, she had privately owned historic buildings that provide no public access use. So she pretty much said it right there. And I don't think it would be a good idea to get rid of that whole paragraph, because I think, again, like Meg said, we need to make it distinct from the other projects so people understand what it's going for and not just kind of leave it sort of too open, because I think that's also going to make it really complicated, having loads of people applying who are not eligible.
Rose?
I just have a question. I don't think it's no public access. It's just that you can visibly see it.
Okay, so
you don't have to be able to access it.
With no public benefit. I mean, which is what this whole program is,
well,
right?
All right, so benefit would be a better word.
Well, that's the parameters for all of the CPA funding. So that's my point is, that whole paragraph, they have to qualify for CPA funding. So obviously there's projects that are not appropriate.
I think the goal is to say, so I feel strongly the paragraph should exist, but that what's in parentheses around historic, the Fairfield Local Historic District should be removed, because I think it's important to specify that. So it says some projects are generally not appropriate for the small grant application process because of their complexity or nature. For example, acquisition projects, large multi-stage projects, cost overruns for existing projects, or privately owned historic buildings that provide no public, and we could say benefit instead of access, and then drop what's in parentheses, and then say in parentheses, and then say, in addition, supplanting municipal funds is not allowable. Now, some of that, of course, is just, it's true of any CPA funding, but someone may be interacting with this. In fact, that's the goal, that the person interacting with this is not familiar with the regular CPA funding process. So we also need to include some of that information in as well as a bit of information to distinguish it for folks who maybe do know the process, but are trying to figure out how is small grants different
Okay, I think you made a great suggestion,
Yes,
which
I think
is
that works.
that second to the last sentence before in parentheses, historic buildings that provide no public change, access to benefit, period. And then,
With the caveat, can I work with Marco to try to figure out like a parallel process to bring to have this conversation with the CPC about privately owned
yes,
properties? Because I think we should have that
Yes.
conversation.
yes, but
Yes,
let's get through
please.
this one first.
Yeah.
So
So we're keeping the paragraph,
if-
sorry.
if we change access, okay, so, or privately owned
benefit.
historic buildings that provide no public benefit,
Right, got it,
Right.
and then delete through that next
right,
to, in addition, supplanting municipal
right.
funds.
So we're
not
just
allowed.
deleting the part about buildings located in the Fairfield Local Historic District,
Yes.
and it'll say
Right,
benefit. I've got it. So that's what we'll put, and I'll put 12,000 for the maximum funding.
all right, does everybody agree with those changes?
Yes.
All right, fine. We don't.
And I
need
move
vote
to
now, right?
that
We
we
need-
approve the small grant process as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. Thank you. All right, Steve, thank you for your patience. So agenda item number 3 is some deadline request. So Steve Huntley's here. Steve has asked for an extension on his 2019 award, 2 projects, I'm sorry. So Steve, can I ask you to take in 2 minutes, just kind of update the committee what you're asking and why you're asking, and then we'll deliberate. And
So in my mind, it's a typo. The contract says that we should have our funding in place by July 31st, 2021. But then further, it says we ought to start construction January of 2021. And through our conversations, we'd said we don't want to, you as a group, I'm paraphrasing and apologize if I'm speaking for you, you don't want us to start work until all the money's lined up, because then you have this beautiful pointed brick and the roof collapses or some, I believe that was the scenario.
Can you specify which project you're talking about, Stephen? Because there's actually 4.
well, there's 2 in 2019.
Well,
Oh,
there's
there's
4
2, but each
projects
one
because
has
one is historic, one is housing for
think-
the Chestnut, and then 123 Pine Street. So there's a lot of projects here.
I believe it's all 4. I believe the dates were aligned in all 4. And it said construction must start of January 2021. And I believe that was a typo. It should have been January 2022 because the requirement was to have all of our financing aligned for July 31st, 2021. So the timeline, the contracts say we should start construction before we have all the money in place. And I believe it was the intention, it's our intention at least, to do this all at once, not just point some bricks and do some other things ahead of time and then come back and do the bigger renovation. So I believe we're just trying to straighten out also a lawyer issue on our end. I'm not sure who did what or how it was all laid out.
I'm
but
kind of confused, Stephen, because we checked out all these dates and with you before they went into contract. And what I'm seeing here is that 123 Pine Street has a completion date of no later than June 30th, 2022. Whereas for the other one, it's 2021. So there's a lot of different dates, you know, like when the funding has to be in hand and when the construction has to be complete, and even midpoints for each project. So
They're not all the same.
So can I make a suggestion? It seems like this is going to get really complicated really fast because we really haven't had a chance to review these dates. Can we table this and come back and address? You don't need this address this meeting, right? This would give the committee, Amy, give you a chance to summarize the dates and maybe talk with Stephen about what he's proposing for a change, and then the
I think,
committee
it would be,
deliberate that.
Stephen, could you put everything in writing? Because it gets very confusing, and then we could talk about it. Look over the contracts and the different deadlines. I can send you what I have or whatever. If you could just put everything in writing and be specific about.
I think it makes sense to line all four of them up and have the dates aligned, frankly. And I'm not sure why our lawyer didn't do that the first
Okay.
time around. It's one project with multiple locations. So, the funding gets awarded once, not,
Right.
It-
And
Not 4 times.
it's
Exactly.
contingent funding, right? I mean, we're the committee like you, we don't want to repoint a building that, the rest of the affordable housing that we've talked about doesn't get executed. So
exactly.
maybe to save all of us a bunch of time is to table it for now, work with Amy, try to come up with, an agreement about what dates you need and what they should have been, and we'll take it up at our next meeting and vote on it. Does that make sense for everybody on the committee?
It does.
Sure.
And just as a footnote here, I may be misremembering, but I have some notion that the original dates might have been set the way they were because we wanted to get things in place around the likely award cycles for the grants you were looking for. And
That's
that
right.
may be where some of the confusion came from.
Yeah.
And if we can unravel all that, maybe we can address this and get it all set out in some more sensible way.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding was that you were expecting to get funding, and this first round you didn't, and so that's why you're requesting the extension.
So, but some dates work for the second round. That's what's interesting about it, and
Okay,
some
I see what you're
don't.
saying.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
you mean the 2022 date?
The 2022, we were hopeful that we'll have an award in place for July of 2021, which then allows us to move forward. And if we have an award in place and say construction's to start in January, according to this, if we have an award in place, I'm far more comfortable coming to you saying, we have this award, we don't want to start construction in the winter. We want to wait till spring.
Yeah.
So can we push that to April? That's a reasonable request. If we're not funded in this next round, then it's a different conversation. So that's ultimately what I was trying to manage to not push you out there to a point where it just sits idle for 12 years, where we just move one date here or there, with the idea that once the award's in hand, we can work together to figure out what the right process is based on the timing of all that and winter conditions, and you can't repoint brick and et cetera.
Okay, so look, Amy and Stephen, you guys want to work together.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to provide some guidance. Mike Falsetti, what do you want to say?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you. I make a motion, we table this until Steve and Amy and maybe the solicitor get together and refine it and approve it and bring it back to us, and we can talk about it and go from there.
Great. So we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, it's tabled. Stephen, thank you. Let us know if we can help in the meantime, okay?
Okay, I'll hang around to the end and we can talk, and I'll give you a brief update on the other project as well.
Okay, great.
Which one is that?
The application for the prevention.
Okay.
Make a motion to take that out of
Let's do
order
it.
so Steve can get on.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor? All right, go ahead, Stephen. Because we're really curious about
Yes.
what's happening in that world. I know that there's some more money coming in from different places. So
So the city money is now in place, the CDBG CARES money. We're right on the edge of signing that contract. We've done zero is a stretch. We've done very limited outreach. We're getting overwhelmed with people. And as I'm sure you know, the governor's eviction moratorium's ending Saturday. So we're anticipating it's going to get very busy very fast. We have a number of about 50 that aren't served yet that we're waiting for the resources to line up for. I'm being very careful how I say that because we don't quite have the signed contract in place for the CDBG CARES money. I believe the draft was sent to me today, actually, by Alicia, and I just have to do a final review. We've gone back and forth with several, you know, what's the application? What's the criteria? What sort of information are we going to collect? All of those sorts of things. So we're now there. We have somewhere between 40 and 50 Holyoke residents that are waiting for help. They're in desperate need of help, that have applied and are eligible for other programs that we're working with them on. And we've gone through substantial resources from Community Foundation that they'd given us over the summer. And again, this is all moratorium ending. So we think there's a lot coming in the very, very near future.
Mike Falsetti, you have your hand up that you want to say something?
I was wondering for the conclusion. So what is there anything else, Steve, that you wanted to share?
I realize it's not on this agenda, so I missed the timeline to ask that it be put on the agenda. I may ask if it be put on next month's agenda to talk this through a little further.
Well, Steve, we have some flexibility. We have other on our agenda and we can discuss it under other. I mean, you know, here's my view of it. You submitted an emergency application, right? What was that dollar amount? Do you remember? Amy, do you know what it was for?
Steve, I don't have it right in front of me. Was it 250,000?
It was 250, but we'd suggested that it be broken into smaller bits as the money goes and we come back to you. So it wouldn't be a one-time award for that amount. It would be multiple awards.
Okay, so.
Can you say more about what you mean by that? How would it be split up?
So we would ask for initial allocation of say 50,000, and then I'd come back and continue to report with the real, what was spent, how's it helped people, not who's it helped. We're not shaming folk, of course. Then as we're moving through it, we think about, or I ask for maybe another allocation, or maybe we don't because other resources. The bottom line with this resource is it's always been a last resort resource for us. We wanted to use every other available resource first because we and many other places benefit from the CPA funds with our projects.
So Steve, let me ask you this question. There's a little bit of a lag between, the time that this committee votes to recommend funding to the city council and that the funding gets approved by the city council and released. So, it's always a little difficult to predict what that lag is going to be. I mean, Mike Sullivan, 45 days, 30 days, 60 days. I mean, something in that.
Well, I mean, if the planets were all lined up, something like this that has something to do with the COVID crisis, I could try and do it on the floor this coming Tuesday. So I could say it could take 5 days.
Right.
That might fail. It could get sent to committee, and then it could take 30 days. It could take 45 days. The question I would have for Steve is, how much in funding did you get from CDBG?
It was just short of 250,000. It was like 247 and some change, 246 and some change, something like that. So
if you've already got 250 in the pipeline, would it hurt to leave your request just tabled for the time being here for another month to see how fast you go through that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. In my head, it was probably a 2-month turnaround. And so I was trying to be proactive to get this going for likely, mid-December, then the holidays, maybe there's one less city council meeting. So maybe we're stretching into January. I apologize. I haven't looked again ahead at the city council schedule, but oftentimes there's only one in December, I think. But in any event, that's sort of where my head was, that it may take a few months to get this going, and you know, a few months in July when we submitted it we wouldn't need it, but now I think we're headed towards the need. However, tabling it a month, I'm certainly great with, and I'll have real information on what we've spent on the CDBG CARES funds, as well as some other sources we have, and we can talk about it then. I'm okay with that as well.
So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think that'd be the way to go.
Mhm.
I don't see anything of this nature not being placed immediately on the agenda, you know, on the finance committee agenda, and right back in front of the full council, if not handled that first night on the floor. In an emergency with something to do with the COVID crisis, I think that would have a good chance of getting done right there. And if it didn't, I'm sure that it would not sit in a committee jacket and language for any amount of time. So,
and
Great.
just to add too, Steve, you know, we're meeting monthly, but if something were to change, you know, I think we've said this a couple times, if something to change, and we need to have a special meeting in order to meet your timeline, we're capable of doing that too. I mean, I was prepared to, you know, take some small action today, but it doesn't seem like we really need to, right? I mean, we can, so let's get you on an agenda for our next meeting to have, you know, more, where I would expect that we're gonna probably vote, you know, to make a recommendation or not to fund some housing assistance that will go to the city council. But, you know, again, if something happens, this eviction, you know, moratorium ending this weekend is really scary. So, you know, it might really change the world. And if we need to meet next week to take some action faster, you know, we can do that too. So, all right. Yeah, Mike Falsetti.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and Steve, through the chairman, how many homeowners can apply for help for their mortgages? It's their money we're spending. How many?
Can homeowners apply, Steve?
I don't believe homeowners can apply.
Okay, you tell all the homeowners that are suffering in the same way that their money that they're paid for, they can't apply for it. How's those for apples?
I can tell you as a landlord of multi-units that we also pay taxes as well. And,
so do they, but it's
and
their
getting the
money.
relief
It's their
helpful.
money. It's their money we're spending,
Chairman,
not
Mr.
yours.
Chairman, he
Their
cannot
money.
moderate it.
So Mike, so let me just also add, right?
It's not appropriate.
Isn't anything that's prohibiting someone from putting together a program to assist homeowners and making an application for funding to assist them? That is, anybody is welcome in this city to submit that application. We will give it due consideration. You know, I think what Steve does is, you know, assisting tenants, and I think that is his world, and I commend him for doing that.
So do I. So do I.
Right. So, but Mike, the point is, if someone wants to put together an application to help homeowners make their mortgage payments, I know. I mean, it was one of the things I liked about Mike Moriarty's application. You know, I know I will certainly support that application as much as I support Steve. So,
okay, do the homeowners know this? Does the average homeowner whose money we're spending, do they know this?
I do not. I doubt it. No.
Yeah, so do I.
But so how do we inform them? I mean, I think it's you know, if it's our job to inform them of the CPA being a potential place for homeowners to come for assistance.
I think that Stephen, doesn't this project also help the owners of the properties, the landlords, because they'll be getting the rent from the tenants?
So when we pay the landlords directly as well, the property owners directly, I thought there was a prohibition on using CPA funds for homeowners to banks, but I may be mixing up sources of money.
I think there is for mortgages. I don't think it's allowed.
I didn't think it was allowed. That would be the only reason we wouldn't do it, because we help a ton of homeowners with our fuel assistance program, keeping their homes warm. Elders who fall back on heating and their electric bills, and
So, Amy, that's a very interesting question. Would you please do some research on that and find out whether CPA funds can be used to help homeowners make their mortgage payments?
Yeah, I have that information somewhere, and I'm pretty sure the answer was no, or there was some type of limitation on it, but I'll try to look for it.
Thank you.
Did-
Right. Anything else for Steve? Anybody else have any? Steve, I guess at this point we'll get you on the agenda for our next regularly scheduled meeting. And again, if you need us to act sooner than that, reach out and we'll be
Yes.
responsive as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, so let's move on. Go to agenda item number 4, which was.
Sorry, Kip, but there's one other extension request that came from MIFA, you may recall. So can I update people on that?
Yeah, I thought we had already said no to them.
Yeah, we did. I just wanted to say that they have indicated that they object to our inability to grant that extension. I just wanted to update you on and what our city solicitor said.
What our city solicitor said about what?
Concerning their objection apparently to, and if, can I just update you on this? Because
I think it's a great idea.
okay, thanks. So one is that, so I relayed everything that the committee determined and told them, no, it's beyond the power of the committee to do this. And I didn't get any response. So I wanted to make sure. I said, did you get this? They said, yes. Then I heard nothing. And then today I got a message from Don Sanders saying that they're letting their lawyer look at that because they think that they are entitled to that extension. But at the same time, he said they sent a letter, which I forwarded to you all, saying that we are resubmitting our application for FY21. So this was very confusing because if you're resubmitting, it sounds like you're acknowledging, okay, we don't have the funds for FY20, so we're resubmitting. So I asked him, so, okay, what is this? And he said, no, they're separate. So I'm still trying to get clarity on that. Because I think if they're saying that this is a new application, then they'd have to submit a new application, not just a little letter that says this is resubmitted.
So I think there's some confusion, right? I think that what we're talking about is extension of the 2019 award that they were given. And then told all of the applicants from 20, if they wanted to be considered in 21, to send a letter saying, please consider my 20 application in your 2021 funding cycle. So I think those are two distinct and separate issues.
Okay.
So
I'm very confused by what you're saying there because.
Okay, well,
let me try.
And I also wanted to add what the city solicitor said, and she said that they still haven't signed on to the preservation restriction, so that's in violation of their contract that they were awarded. So even if they're saying that they don't accept that they are not granted the extension, they're still kind of they're not following what they agreed to for that contract.
Well, that's.
Okay, well, can I just jump in here because I think I can clarify some of what I suspect is going on, and some of it may be my fault. In that, when we last discussed this, I think I said something to the effect of, you can tell them that if they want these funds, they're free to resubmit that application. And it is entirely possible, it seems to me, that they construed this as meaning that they could resubmit, as I think they can, their 2019 application and want to do that at the same time as they're disputing our determination that they are not eligible for this extension, which I think there's no question about. Their argument otherwise is entirely frivolous. But I think that they may mean that they want to resubmit their 2019 application, and if so, that should be very easy to clarify. And if they also want to resubmit their 2020 application, they can do that. It doesn't mean that, you know, we have to accept either or both.
Correct. So we did communicate, Amy, I did ask you to communicate to all the applicants for 2020 that didn't get funded, that they could just send a letter to the committee saying, okay. So
Okay, so that's what this is.
yes. And and let's and on their 2019 agreement, which has these dates that they've asked for an extension on, right? When we deliberated this at the last meeting, it was, you know, Mimi, I think you stated very clearly that there was no provision in that MIFA contract that provided for a granting an extension. And I think that they have, and I communicated that to them, and I think they have looked at that agreement and they have come to a different opinion, which is there's very specific language in there that provides for an extension. So, you know, I think they're asking us to, you know, to understand that there is language in that agreement that allows for it to be extended and to reconsider our vote. So, you know,
well, they're saying they're entitled to the extension, which is something completely different.
Well, the agreement provides for, which is something that, very, you know, in my opinion, was misstated at our last meeting, where we said that there was no provision in the MIFA agreement that provided for an extension, unlike some of the other agreements.
Wait. I think that I must have been unclear, because the problem with the MIFA contract is that the provision they are referencing only allows for an extension under the circumstances where a condition has been satisfied. There are two dates. The condition of having 100% of their funding expires at the most liberal in December of 2020. If they cannot meet that, I mean, if they can meet that funding deadline, then yes, we have the discretion to extend their time on this. But if they cannot, at that point, we have zero discretion. Our ability to extend it goes away.
So here's my suggestion. Let's let Jenna and MIFA's attorney work through that language, because I don't read it the same way that you do. And I don't think that this committee should be the ones that make that determination. Let's let Jenna and MIFA's attorneys look at the agreements and see if in fact we have the ability to extend those agreements. Because, you know, what I do have from Jenna is an email that says, regarding Steve Huntley's application, that she wants to point out that these are similar scenarios. They should be treated the same, meaning that if MIFA is not granted an extension, I would think similarly Pine Street project would not be granted an extension as well. To grant one, but not the other, may be interpreted as being biased, absent certain reasoning. So let's let the lawyers work out whether or not the committee has the authority to extend the dates. And if they do or don't, we'll take action following that. So Amy, will you please?
That's really not going to work. I'm sorry, but I have had lots of conversations with Jenna, and she has told me that the ball is in the court of the committee and she cannot do that. And so in the last meeting, it was decided what I should say to them. And I followed what the committee just determined. So now to go back on that is she's not going to be able to do that, you know, and it's now, are we saying that we want to contradict the information that I told them? It's getting very muddy to contradict.
We're getting into a dispute with an applicant over the legal language of an agreement. And what I'm asking you to do is to talk to Jenna and get a legal opinion back to the committee, whether we can in fact grant this extension. Because I heard Mimi again say, we don't have the authority to do that. There is no ability to do that unless they have the funding. What I want is a legal opinion from the city solicitor's office that tells us whether or not we have the authority to grant an extension. That's all, simple. Not asking her to do anything. I'm not asking her to make any, you know, to make a decision.
Can I just point out here that it is now October 14th. We are entering another grant cycle. If they are proceeding in good faith, there is no reason whatsoever that they cannot simply resubmit their 2019 application, and we can decide at that point. If we recommend it again, that would have the same effect as granting them the extension on this funding.
Right, as would for Steve Huntley.
Beautiful.
As
Yes,
would for
and I would be
Steve-
happy to do it for Steve Huntley.
So, but now we're asking people to all resubmit their applications again. All I want is to not be accused of being biased. Let's look at this and ask the solicitor whether, because as I read, she said, if you do one and not the other, you're being biased. And what I want her to do is look at the language of the agreement and tell us whether or not we have the authority. I looked at the language myself, and I'm not a lawyer. It was the exact same language in both agreements, the Valley Opportunity and the MIFA. So let's just ask Jenna, Amy, ask Jenna simply, okay? The question is, does the committee have the authority to grant that extension?
But we just went through this whole discussion last time, and
I voted on this last time.
I showed you the video evidence of how this was portrayed. And Jenna has told me that the committee needs to come to this decision. So
yes, whether or not to grant an extension, but not whether or not we have the authority to grant an extension. That's the question. Does the committee have the authority to grant an extension? That's it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Kip, should it not be you who's talking to Jenna? Because it seems like you have this avenue that you want to take, and I think you're handing it off to Amy, and maybe it may get misconstrued along the way. So maybe it would be a good idea if you talk to Jenna and get this on a path, because we've already voted on this.
Yeah.
Well,
I just want to say here that you are strongly advocating for a position that the rest of the committee has already repudiated.
Well, yeah. But I think we voted on it based upon representations from you, Mimi, that were not accurate. That's what I want to make sure we understand.
We have video evidence. We have, okay, I am only licensed in New York. I am not a Massachusetts lawyer. Do what you want about this. But I think that you are being extremely unreasonable. Putting us in a terrible position.
Asking the city solicitor to make a determination as to whether or not we have the authority to grant this extension.
We promised the city council when they approved this that we would not extend these funds indefinitely. That is the basis upon which the city council approved it. If the city council wants to extend this, then the process exists for them to reapply and for us to bring it to the city council and see if they still want to put citizens' money toward this.
And we could also vote, I suggested at the last meeting that we bring it to the city council to let them make the determination whether or not to grant the extension. And you argued we did not have the ability to do that. The contract did not contain language that allowed for a granting of an extension. So all I'm saying is, does the contract have the language? I said at the time, I didn't have it in the
contract. Is not the agreement. The agreement has, the contract is based in what the city council authorized and what we recommended. It is not supposed to supersede that set of circumstances. Never mind, you're not a lawyer. This is not a conversation even worth having.
That's the same thing as Valley Opportunity Council. Look, I'll read it again. This is what Jenna said, right?
Yes, I'm not arguing about Valley Opportunity Council. I am saying that if we have any concern along those lines, Valley Opportunity Council will, I'm sure, simply resubmit the documents and we will go from there.
So are we going to go to Valley Opportunity Council and tell them that we cannot grant the extensions that he's asking us to do?
If we have to.
We don't know yet what he's asking.
Yeah, we don't know yet what he's asking, and we don't know what the evidence is going to show.
What evidence? He's going to ask for dates. He's going to ask for, he's asking us to change the dates in the contract.
On bases that we are not yet clear on. But this is a different situation. You know, I would want to go back and see what we recommended to the city council and why. But, you know, the reason I'm stuck on this is because this was an extremely controversial application from MIFA, and we swore that we were not tying up these funds indefinitely.
Or across the board. Across the board.
No, not across the board. We did it
It was
under the,
specific to the
but-
MIFA project.
it is a
I'm
different
sorry?
project. They're not comparable. If Jenna wants us to resubmit on all of these and to change the language going forward, I'm fine with that. But I am not fine, well, I'm fine with this, however. It's going to turn out that we cannot extend this language on our own authority. I'm reasonably confident in that. If you want to spin our wheels while we work this through again, fine. I'm
Okay,
sorry. I'm
thanks.
going to just go away for a while now, and you guys can vote on it.
All right, so Amy, please ask Jenna whether this committee has the authority to, because the language is in the agreement, ask her, and if you want me to do it and you don't want to do it, I'm happy to contact Jenna.
I think it might be a good idea if you do it, because I've already conveyed the wishes of the committee and CC'd her on that. So it's just kind of becomes confusing. She then tells me to go back to you, to go back to the committee.
Okay.
Anyway, so
Okay, I'll ask
I'd
Jenna.
certainly like to be in on the conversation, but I don't.
Okay,
Actually, you know, I'm coming back to say one more thing, which is if this conversation is taking place this way, and I'm fine with it, I would like both ends of it to be documented. I want to know what is said on both sides.
fine. Good enough.
Please
All
don't
right,
leave,
anything
Amy.
else? We have Andrew McMahon. We have a proposal from Andrew McMahon as agenda item number 4. Anybody have any comments on Andrew's?
I can give you a quick synopsis if you want.
Please.
Okay, so he's saying that he estimates that he would work about 50 hours a year at $60 an hour. So that comes to $3,000 a year. The way that it would work is I would just sort of give that information to the purchasing department with his scope of work, which he laid out. And I need to know how much to budget for. So I would do a blanket requisition order, which could be for, you know, the 3,000, or Kip, you mentioned 5,000. And then, you know, if he underspends, we would just let them know, and it would not come out of the CPA account any further. If it ended up costing more, we could add to it.
Mike Falsetti.
Mr. Chairman and Amy, the 10% that we have to set aside for administration and finance annually, what is that current amount as we speak? Do you know off the top of your head?
You
For
mean the
the
10% per category?
No, for the administration of
Oh, that's 5%.
It's 5%. And
Yeah.
what is that dollar amount annually, for example?
Well,
just
it
approximately?
varies, but it's usually averages at about 30,000. But this is why we're hiring Andrew, is to help figure out exactly how much money we have. So there is definitely money. In fact, we had money left over last year, so there's money for this.
Okay, is it reasonable to assume that we can afford $3,000
Yes.
as we speak? Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, if, and whatever is the will of the council, I would recommend we hire Andrew as our finance guy. As he states in his publication, what he was going to do, his scope of work, how much he's going to charge approximately initially, and then I'm sure as things get on board and gets regularly reported, his hours would drop because he wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every month. But for startup, any accountant is going to tell you it's going to take me a lot of time to get your ducks in a row. So he's more than qualified. He knows us and how we do our business. He's an ideal candidate. So if we can afford it, I make a motion we hire Andrew to be our finance guy.
And I would second that. I think we're lucky to have him.
I agree.
Any open for discussion? Any discussion? Mike Sullivan.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, Amy, was this properly advertised?
I went through Lori Bellinger as Kip advised, and so it doesn't need to be advertised as long as we provide this information to purchasing, you know, which I can do with the scope of work, the cost, you know, exactly what he's going to be doing.
Okay, we're confident it didn't have to be publicly posted or advertised?
Well, I asked her what we need to follow, and I'm telling you, this is what she told me.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right. We have a motion and a second to hire Andrew per his proposal for up to, what do we want to make the number? 3,000, 4,000? He said 60 hours at $50 an hour.
He said 50 hours at $60 an hour per year. So that's 3,000 a year.
So do we want to build a little buffer in there just so we don't have to deal with it again?
I would.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, make it $5,000. We'll throw in an extra 2,000. Make it 5,000.
All right. So we have a motion and a second to hire Andrew, and with a budget of up to $5,000. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, somebody liked it.
That wasn't Andrew, was it? Okay, so agenda item number 5, we have the request from the merry-go-round people. You want to, Amy, summarize that issue for the committee, please?
Yeah, okay. So Maureen Costello contacted me after looking at, the agreement that Jenna drew up in the law department. And it has a requirement for a historic consultant as well as vendors with demonstrated experience in the standards, the historic standards. And, I think that the reason the historic consultant got in there was because of Mike Moriarty's proposal way back when he was going to have a historic consultant because he couldn't have vendors that had demonstrated experience. So what I think, my take on this is that if she can show that her vendors have demonstrated experience with following, doing work that follows the U.S. Department of the Interior standards for historic rehabilitation, then that should be sufficient. But if she can't do that, she would need the historic consultant, but that she doesn't need both.
Okay.
So I just need confirmation from you all on that so that I can, and this will affect future applicants as well and current, new recipients.
So
because it may be onerous for them to have both.
So we're talking about an agreement that has not yet been executed?
Right. This is the Holyoke merry-go-round agreement. So in her contract that's been drawn up that she's looking at, it says that she is required to have both a historic consultant and vendors with demonstrated experience in this executing the standards.
Right. So it's a draft agreement that we're not modifying an agreement that's already been signed.
Well, it was a final agreement, but it hasn't been signed yet.
Okay, so Mike Falsetti.
Mr. Chairman, through Amy, where does it come from that our contract state? Did we put that requirement in? Did this committee vote to put that requirement in that you had to have an historical consultant and a vendor?
It might have been that I was confused when we were doing Mike Moriarty's because he had the historic consultant in there. So it could have been that is how it got, I think I had it in my instructions for the application. So
I don't, Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's required. We're talking about horses here. Duplicating what you already have. We're not reinventing the wheel. I don't see that as a requirement that we should, I think it's a little bit too much given the scope of this activity. We're talking about horses. I mean, city-owned
that's why I'm saying just maybe if the vendors have the experience, then that's enough. And that could be what the blueprint to follow for other contracts.
All right. Do we need to vote on that change or do you just?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to remove it. I mean, on this particular application, I would remove it.
I'm in agreement with you. My question is, do we need as a board to take?
I would take a vote.
Change that language on a not to be executed agreement.
Can we specify the language we're voting on?
Sorry?
Can we just specify the language that we're voting on?
Go ahead.
Kip, well, I'm just reading from the email that Amy sent me regarding this matter. It says our contracts state that historic recipients must budget for both an historic rehabilitation consultant and vendors with demonstrated experience. I would like to remove on this particular application that the historic rehabilitation consultant is, drop it. I don't think for this application it's needed. We're talking horses here. We're not talking about a building or a statue or a memorial bridge.
Right.
It's horses.
And the work's going to be done by an experienced vendor. So I mean, I could see if you were going to send it over to Holyoke High School to have them do it, you might want to have an experienced consultant. But in this case, I don't think we need one.
Well,
So
that's what I don't know yet, but I said to her, can she give me, show me that the vendors have that experience? Because my point is that if they do, they don't need a consultant. If they don't, they would need a consultant.
No.
Yeah, no, I think this is a case by case thing. And in this case, the vendors who are qualified to work on this have a very particular experience, and there isn't any question about what the historical context is. The requirement for both is probably for circumstances where, you're restoring, say, a Victorian mansion, and you want both somebody who can say that, yes, the desire to put a Tiffany-style stained glass window at this spot is historically appropriate, and you want a vendor who has experience executing that kind of work. So there's a reason that you have both there in general. But in this particular instance, it is probably unnecessary because the vendor who can restore the horses is doing a particular kind of work that we've already agreed is the kind of work being done. So it should be possible to take it out here, and we can revisit the need for both in general in other circumstances.
okay, so we'll make a motion to eliminate that requirement for a historic consultant in the Holyoke merry-go-round contract.
Mimi, do you want to do that? You want to make that a motion?
I can make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
All right. So are there any other agenda items that anybody wants to discuss tonight? Amy, you have something?
Yeah, I do have some things. One is the grant cycle. I'd like to share screen quickly to show you this. It should be simple to do this. Let's see. Okay, can everybody see this timeline here?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of the applicants are asking what the timeline is because, as we know from past, grant recipients, they have other deadlines they have to meet. So they need to know when they're going to get a decision from us. But my first point here is that you see what I've highlighted. Yeah. I would like the full application to be due December 30th instead of December 15th. And this is what I've learned from previous experience is that I need more than 2 weeks to review the eligibility forms and find out if they're eligible. It is complex. It's still quite complex, and we may get many more this time. You see, if we kept it at December 15th, I would only have between November 30th when the forms are due and December 15th for turnaround time, and that's just not enough turnaround time. So I would like to, and plus I want to give them a full month to do the full application. So that's why I would like to have that date for the full application be December 30th instead of December 15th. That's the first point. And then the other is just, I'd like people to just eyeball this. I know this is subject to change, but normally we have this on the website, and I can give people an idea of when the grant when the committee will reach its, recommendation time, the public meeting, when that will happen. So
I have a question. So December 30th, you changed that date already? Or?
No.
Okay, no. So that's what we have now.
No, we have December 15th now because that's what you all said. Right. But okay. I thought about it, and I thought about past grant cycles and realized we need to give them a full month, and I need more time to be able to tell them if they're eligible.
So, okay, so forgive me if I'm missing something. So right now the timeline is they submit the eligibility determination forms on October 30th.
By that time.
We respond to eligibility determination forms by November 30th. That's a month.
Yeah, but they, let me think about this.
That's their first.
No, they,
Okay.
Okay, yeah, okay, it says that I have to respond to them. All right, now I'm getting mixed up. I have to respond to them by November 30th. Right, but I don't want them to then have less than a month to complete the full application, which is why I want them to have till December 30th, because otherwise I would have to get back to them. See, to give them a full month, as if this was if this date was December 15th, to give them a full month, I would have to get back to them by November 15th. I want to have until November 30th to let them know if they're eligible. And that's why I want to change this date to December 30th.
Okay,
And
so
we're
if
also
I'm
changing the
understanding
date
this
above it.
correctly, the part of the issue here is that the reason we bifurcate eligibility and full application is that we want to relieve applicants of having to do a full application if we already know they're not going to be eligible and there's really no point. So if we're asking them to have a full application within 2 weeks of learning that they are eligible, we may be putting pressure on them that is counterproductive from our point of view. Whereas if we get them the eligibility determination and then they have a month, they don't have that same pressure to be ready to submit a full application if they are deemed eligible. So they won't do it if we have already told them that they are ineligible.
So,
am I getting that right, Amy?
Yeah, and the main thing is, I mean, that if we kept this date at December 15th, I would want to give them a full month, but that only leaves me 2 weeks to decide whether they're eligible, and I need more time.
So my question for you is the line item number 2 that says November 30th. Did that used to say November 15th? Is that what the committee had?
No, there was no, this is based on, previous years.
All right, so I don't have any, I'm just trying to understand where we're changing. So it's, you get a month to review them and notify them, and then they have a month to submit it. And we're pushing the date back from December 15th to December 30th. That's
Right.
it, right?
I think that's what's happened is because of COVID, we're just like a month off. So she's always had the month to address the initial applicants, and then they have a month to respond.
Okay.
But we used to get those in September, and now we're getting in October because of COVID.
Right,
Is
okay.
that true? I think.
So does anybody want to make a motion to approve this timeline?
Yeah, I'll move to extend that to December 30th.
And how about the other dates? Do they look okay?
They seemed fine to me.
I mean, it's all subject to change, but people really want to have an idea of when things are happening. And
Right.
notice the public meeting is on here, which I think could be combined. Instead of a separate meeting with just the committee, it could be a public meeting that includes the committee as well as the public on
Yes.
Zoom.
I agree.
Well, we may be able to do that, but here I would suggest that because of COVID, we wait and see what develops and what kind of a universe we're in. Because we don't even know yet whether we'll be able to meet in person or whether we're going to be doing this on Zoom.
Right.
Well, I was assuming it would be on Zoom.
Okay.
Well, it may change. So
All right,
that's, I think it looks fine to me.
let's just leave it the way it is right here.
Yeah.
Finalize these dates. So someone want to make a motion to do that?
I think I did.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Second. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so these are the revised dates. Any other?
There's
Dara's here. I assume that because
I was going to get to you, Dara.
What is
Sorry.
it? Sorry?
Well, she's been here since the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
welcome,
There's
Dara.
First.
We took a break to eat dinner. That's when I turned my camera off.
Oh, good. I'm glad you got a break.
My name is Lee Darazola. I'm a project manager with Wayfinders. We are currently in construction on Library Commons 1. As Amy well knows, we are into the planning board for Library Commons 2. I am a relatively new project manager with Wayfinders, and one of the things that I learned going through the planning board with a couple unintentional missteps is that it would be a nice thing to be part of a committee before I'm presenting something. So I just wanted to see how you folks worked and, you know, what the CPC in Holyoke was about. So I ate my dinner and
Thank goodness.
enjoyed some of your deliberations, and I do hope to be before you I've been working with Amy, and the term emergency is a little difficult for me to use because it's a project that's going to be years in the making and has been years in the planning already, but we don't want to ask for funding too early because then it ties up funding. But now we are looking at application to the state for multiple millions of dollars, and it is very much received more competitively if it has a local match. So we are working on an application that we hope you see as an emergency so that we could get an award in early 2021, January, February timeframe. I mean, I shouldn't say so we get an award. So if there is an award happening, that it could be in time for our funding application so that the state sees leveraged funds and gives millions.
Yeah, and Lee Darrow submitted an eligibility form, which I sent to people, and I believe it's eligible, so I sent her the full application so she can start working on it.
Who did you send it to, Amy? Who did you send it to?
I sent you all her eligibility form.
I never got it.
What?
I never got it.
Okay, maybe if
News
you
to me.
look through your emails
No,
again.
I never got it. I never got it. It's as simple as that. This is news to me.
Can we, Amy, resend it to everybody? Because honestly, I don't remember seeing it either. I've got a bunch of emails in my file that if we could just.
Sure, I'll resend it.
Just to do the quick recap, people who know me know I'm better at 6 a.m. than I am at 8 p.m. It's a 41 unit. Library Commons is 38. Library Commons 2 is 41 units of affordable rental housing on 4 different sites, all either across the street or adjacent to Library Commons 1 by the beautiful public library. I'm working on truly a transformational neighborhood project. So that's sort of the quick recap. The eligibility application confirmed that they would be deed restricted in perpetuity. We filled in 250,000 as the approximate ask. And I believe that was pretty much the extent of the pre-app, Amy, the eligibility.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I did see that.
So I think you're on the right path. I mean, I think, you touched on it. It is a little bit touchy, is this an emergency? But, emergency is not defined. And, if it means you need us to act sooner than we normally would in order for you to have a greater chance of getting that grant, then I think there will be some discussion amongst the committee members whether or not that truly is an emergency and we should be contemplating, recommending funding or not, or whether we should kick it to the regular funding cycle. But that's, I think, will take quite a bit of deliberation. Members will have different opinions, but I don't think that you're getting your application done sooner. If it ends up getting kicked to regular funding cycle, we'll consider it as part of the regular funding cycle too. So
And I just resent that to everybody on the committee, so check your email. You should let me
Thank
know if
you.
you don't get it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
I also want to mention that we got another eligibility form from Deputy Chief Tom Shea for the fire station.
Yeah, I saw that.
I believe I sent to you all.
Yep. I
To
got it.
restore a fire truck. So those are the two we have at this point.
So
And
Wayfair,
that's eligibility under the regular funding cycle.
Right, because right now people are doing, that is open now. The eligibility form is open for people to apply.
Okay.
He sent it to us incomplete though. He didn't
yeah, I
answer
saw that.
one of the questions. So, and I've told him, but I haven't heard back. So.
Okay. Anything else for the Dara? Any other, or we need to schedule?
There's just one more before we decide about the next CPC meeting from me. In any case, I just wanted to remind just let everybody know that I sent over the budget article that Andrew drew up for the CPA appropriation, which the city council has to approve. And Ryan says that it is going to the finance committee tomorrow. And he asked if you or I would want to be present for that. But I'm thinking this is a pretty routine thing. I mean, this is just getting their city council official approval.
I have a conflict. I can't make that meeting tomorrow night. So
I'm on the finance committee, so
There you
I'll
go.
be there.
problem solved. So do we want to look at scheduling our next meeting?
Sure. I just want to mention that November 11th, which is a Wednesday, is Veterans Day. So that's a city holiday. So I want to propose November 18th.
Okay. Anybody have any issues with November 18th?
Didn't work.
Work for everybody? Yes.
Seems
Okay.
fine.
Let's schedule it for the 18th then. All right. Anything else? Yeah.
18th doesn't work for me, but if you guys can make quorum, then
Well,
you don't need me. It's fine.
what day would work for you, Izzy?
I mean, the 18th is my daughter's birthday.
Okay.
Oh, Izzy.
We don't want to do.
I don't want to do that to you.
Well, could we do the 10th? Can we do a Tuesday? Can we do it the 10th or the 17th?
I can't do the 10th.
Yeah, I've got a planning board meeting this.
I can't do Tuesday evenings. The 25th is open for me, I believe, although that's right before Thanksgiving. I don't know.
That day. Why can't we do on the 11th of Veterans Day? What's the issue there?
Well,
It's a holiday.
I'm not sure if we can do an official meeting and put up an agenda on the city holiday. I would have to ask Brian about that.
We could move it up a week and have it November 4th.
That's the day after election day. Yeah, we could.
Oh,
That sounds good.
That can help me change the mind.
Nice job, Izzy.
how's the 4th work for everybody?
I think the city council might have moved their meeting till the 4th.
Yeah,
I think they have their own Zoom account, however.
Yeah, but then
Yeah, but Mike.
yeah, but he's got.
Mike's on.
Oh, you wouldn't be able to make it. Okay.
Well, I think it's more important that Izzy's there than me. So
Oh,
I'll gladly,
wait, don't
gladly
undervalue
give up, I'll
yourself
gladly
like
give up
that.
I'll gladly give up the 18th, you know?
That's funny.
Oh, nice.
You know what?
You better chime in, Izzy, that night.
You should leave it the 18th, and then if any, I guess leave it the 18th. It's fine because if you guys make quorum, then you make quorum because I think that I am in conversations with the other Parks and Recs commissioners, and my time should be up.
No.
Yeah, unless they don't want to take it.
Oh, that's right. Your turn.
And I'll do it again. I spoke to him about it the last meeting. This meeting that's coming up, I believe it's Thursday or Friday. I'll have a definite answer on whether or not they'll take it. I told them I don't mind doing it if they want to, but it should be on a rotational schedule, and the power shouldn't just be with me. So we'll have the meeting this week, I believe. If not, it's next week, and then hopefully, not hopefully, because I don't mind it, but at the same time, I'm not the type of person that wants to have power all the time. And I don't say power, but like this is supposed to be a shifted position within the Parks and Recs department. And there are 2 new Parks and Recs commissioners. They're brand new. So I think their term would run perfectly with the 3-year term that runs with the Parks and Recs Commission. So everything would run in line with that. When they finish their commission, they'll be finished their time serving on CPA 2 as well.
All right, so we'll go with the 18th.
Yeah, that's fine.
Does that work with everybody?
Works for me.
So, so let me just say one thing. I do have Conservation Commission. My term is also up, and Mary Moriarty is actually shadowing with me tonight and trying to see how CPA works. And so in the future, I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer, and she's going to cover once I can't do it anymore. And so she's been shadowing just to see how CPA works and what we're all about, so that she can fill in immediately and have a easy transition.
Great.
Welcome,
Thank,
Mary.
thank
And
you.
not
Welcome,
not
Mary.
sure how easy that will be.
No, it's not easy.
First of all, Rosemary is the tough act to follow, but also from just listening to the goings on tonight, sounds pretty complicated to me.
Harry, do you still want to do it? I mean,
Exactly. That's a
Don't
big
talk
question.
her out of it. Don't talk her out.
Listen, could you go a little easier on her next week or next time?
Well, we don't usually have fights, so it's kind of an atypical meeting.
It's a very colorful group.
Well, you all seem very expert in what you're doing. And the awards last year were really good, I thought. And I don't know, it just seems pretty complicated.
Yeah.
Glad to have you here, Mary.
Yes. She would be a great person on the board, and we're gonna roll this through slowly. Her and I are gonna work together. When it's right, it's right.
Cool.
Sounds good.
I'm just waiting for the meeting when Rick finally says something.
He spoke up last time.
He
I
did.
think.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Mike, you weren't here when he spoke up.
Oh, yeah, I missed the show then.
A lot of multi,
All
a
right,
lot
we're
of
at 2 hours.
multitasking going on over here.
beautiful.
All right, we're at 2 hours. I'm tired. Anybody
Amen.
want to make a motion?
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you
Aye.
later.
All right, don't forget
Aye.
to go and vote.
Bye, Mary.
All right, thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very
Bye,
much.
everybody.
Have a good
See
night.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good
Bye.
night.